Hey guys, look what just arrived in the transporter room.
Oh, is that the captain's new FunWhole?
The captain's new what hole? Ow! When is the captain going to open his new funnel? Having a new fun hole is tight. What? Hey, Captain Mutant here, and a funny thing happened after we took a detailed look at FunWhole's small newsstand set. They offered us the Antique Store to review. They may have a questionable company name, but they're A-OK in my book. You're only saying that because they gave us something for free. We gave them a frank and honest review, and they appreciated that. And you made fun of their company name, and they appreciated that too. So I thought I'd take a close look at this competitor to LEGO's Modulars and see if the time has come for LEGO to watch their back.
'Cause the competition is coming a knocking.
If it's anything like the newsstand, they may well have to. With that in mind, I'll be exploring the build experience, the instructions, any quirks, all cool steps, look at the final model, and anything else I feel might be important to mention. Sounds like you've got your work cut out for yourself. The first thing I'd like to say is this is a complex build. It actually made me realize the work LEGO put in to make their own sets as elegant to construct as possible. That doesn't mean to say FunWhole's Antique Store is not a great looking build. It certainly is, and there are actually a lot of very clever building techniques and concepts that would not be possible with LEGO's available inventory of parts, since FunWhole produce a few clever and unique pieces. But if you've ever followed instructions from Rebrickable, for instance, or from the Bricklink developer program, you'll understand what I mean. Building the Antique Store felt more like assembling a mock, with a lot of complex ways of doing things, sometimes more complex than they should be, but with a lack of finesse, if you know what I mean.
It's worth it for a great-looking antique shop though, right?
There is that, but there are steps that got me puzzled. Like step 9 at the very start of the build, which involves a Technic pin. Oh, they call them Technic pins too? Nah, I call them that because that's how I know them from the LEGO world. I have no idea what FunWhole call them. A hole plug? McCluck? Ignore him. So, that pin is connected to 2 plates with a Technic hole in them. And then the top is capped off with a 2x2 round plate on step 18, and I wondered why. It really doesn't serve any purpose beyond what a standard stud connection would have offered. Guess it increases the piece count. It almost feels like this was a vestige from an earlier draft version of the model, but as it evolved, its usefulness was forgotten, like a human appendix. Unnecessarily complex, yet superfluous design.
So it does use more pieces than it needs.
That's a problem even LEGO are guilty of. But I've never encountered a superfluous building step like this before. But that's a minor issue. One thing I really didn't like were parts that aren't connected with enough studs, leading them to not being attached securely. Take what's going on step 33. This is when you build the entrance of the shop with a bunch of concentric curved tiles, likely representing a carpet. The biggest piece is only attached by a single stud, which means it can move, and it does much too easily just by touching it a little. You'd never see that in a LEGO set, but you see it here. Bit shoddy. And that's not the only place it happened. Both curved banisters on the middle floor are only held by 1 stud, which means they can easily move and even come off. Same issue, same outcome. It wouldn't have been difficult to replace one of the tiles with a stud on the other end to secure both sides of each banister parts, but this wasn't done. You don't see it often as you build the Antique Store, but it does pop up now and again. And that's the lack of finesse I'm talking about.
It is quite nice that all floors are tiled though.
Agreed. Unlike the LEGO modelers who only tile the ground floor, it gives the store a more finished look. So these loosely attached parts surely show this set is more aimed at adult collectors rather than it being a playset? Oh yes, it's definitely aimed at adults. But adults like to play sometimes too, you know. Okay. This review started on a somewhat negative footing, so let's turn that around with the manual. I found the instructions excellent, clear, and simple to follow, very reminiscent of the way LEGO do things, in fact. Actually, there are some features that LEGO could do well to be inspired by. Just like LEGO does it, you see the parts you need at the top of the page, but sometimes it can be tricky to know at a glance whether you need, say, a 2x8 plate or a 2x10 one, for instance. But here, like on step 249 and all through the instructions, you're given the number of studs for each piece.
Saves you having to count the studs yourself.
Exactly. It's a nice touch that increases the enjoyment of the build. And sometimes, when it's difficult to see how the pieces should be laid out exactly, you're shown them from a different angle. This is especially important when using parts designed to house the electrical wires.
How are the pieces compared to Lego ones?
Aside from a handful of unique ones, they look exactly like Lego parts, and from a distance, you could easily mistake them for such. But weirdly enough, they feel different. There's something about the tactile experience that's different. But it's pretty subtle actually, and I think it's probably because I've handled so many Lego parts over the years, my fingers must be able to tell the difference.
So if they look the same, they behave in the same way?
You'd think that, but there are differences. It all comes down to that off-sighted clutch power. And I have to say, it's almost there here, but not quite. You notice at first when laying the pavement, some of the pieces will lift back up slightly over time, but as the build carries on, it becomes more noticeable, to the point that I had trouble getting the floors to attach properly.
Wow, and I thought Lego's obsession of getting their parts right to the micron was excessive.
1 micron, after a micron, after a micron, and pretty soon you're a millimeter off. It all adds up, and it leads to problems when attaching the floors together. Take the bottom of this wall for the middle floor. It should be flush, but it's noticeably raised to the left and right, and... Okay, I should talk about the worst part of this build, which is by the fireplace at the top floor. Look round the back. The wall on the left isn't actually attached to the rest of the build on the other side of the fireplace. I'm sorry, but that's shoddy work, and aside from the warping of the pieces, this was the worst aspect of this antique store.
You would never see that on a Lego set.
That's right. The modular floors just slot together perfectly without having to struggle. Unlike here. That's my point, and it's a big difference between the two companies, and is clearly a serious issue for bigger builds like this one.
Yeah, we didn't notice it with the newsstand, which was much smaller.
Now, let's take a look at the lighting kit. First up, the end result. As you can see, it's pretty darn spectacular.
That's definitely the money shot.
Isn't it just? You just look at it and are in awe at how beautiful it is. But damn, those little electrical connectors sure are a pain to connect.
Fingers too chubby?
Okay, there is that, but I think it's because of my decaying eyes. It's not clear which way to connect them. One way's the right way, while the other runs the risk of damaging the tiny cables inside the junction box, which ain't half stressful, I can tell you. And as you build the set, you're constantly thinking, have I connected this right? Are the cables not being damaged somehow when I secured them with other parts? Although, I have to admit, this is most likely a me thing. I mean, I'm definitely not an electrician, and dealing with tiny electrical cables kind of freaks me out.
Let's be clear here. You don't need to be an electrician to follow these instructions, but it is tricky to know which way to put the cable into the connector. Oh, kinda like a USB cable.
Except USB connections are big and chunky, and it's easy to realize which way is right without damaging either the connector or the socket.
What if one side of the connector was color-coded, matching the top of the socket, for instance? That would help you see which way to put it at a glance.
A color-coordinated hole.
That's what she said.
Anything would make it easier, truth be told. Now, another bugbear is the clever connectors between the floors, so the power flows through easily when the floors are attached, while making it easy to remove the floors without having cables in the way. Clever parts, except they're on stickers.
Why?
I don't get it.
FunWhole worked hard to separate the specialized pieces to accommodate the cables through the building. So why not have these connectors pre-attached to their special 1x4 plates?
I don't get it, but mind you, I hate stickers, and these are particularly irksome.
Actually, speaking of stickers...
They're the only ones, which makes them even more maddening. But yeah, every specialized decorations you see are prints. All of them. And that's wonderful. Actually, not only that, but the print quality is fantastic and, unlike Lego, can also be edge to edge. In fact, FunWhole produced prints that span multiple pieces, and these are tightly packaged, pre-assembled in their own plastic wrapping. One even uses a spare plate to let you see how they should be assembled on the model, so you can just transfer them from there onto their final destination.
Isn't the point of these complex 3D puzzles to build them yourself?
Of course it is, but I personally appreciate the attention to detail and the care put into creating edge-to-edge prints across multiple pieces and then being carefully delivered pre-assembled to make sure your model is done right. Plus, it beats LEGO hands down, who keeps insisting stickers are the way to go for most of their specialized parts.
It is weird considering they do print some parts.
But not all. And when you see a company like FunWhole doing such a good job at printing, you have to wonder why the biggest toy company in the world can't do it themselves.
Because only the best stickers are good enough.
I'm not sure Ole Kirk Christiansen would agree with that.
So FunWhole take the crown of the best printed pieces.
Would that it were so simple. Mishaps can and do occur. I mean, let's be fair. Printing mishaps occur with LEGO too, yet I've never personally encountered one myself. Here, I found one such glitch with one of the clocks at the top floor. The face is not printing in the right place, making the clock crooked when you install it.
It's a wonky clock.
I'd say it's a super rare clock, likely a very expensive one at that, and the prized possession of this store then.
Ha, maybe. And while we're on the subject of mishaps, I ended up with missing pieces.
What?
Don't be so shocked, McCluck. That happens with LEGO too, although, again, I never experienced a problem myself, but I've seen others discuss missing pieces. But you know what? Most of the time, it's just tiny parts like around 1x1 tiles and such like. Here, Bag 6 ended up with a missing 2x2 corner plate and 2 1x4 plates.
Those are pretty big parts to go walkies.
They are, and I got a bunch of largish other ones instead. So if the packing is based on weight as it is with LEGO, then that might account for the discrepancy.
Were you able to finish the model though?
Yeah, it just means I ended up with a hole in the wall round the back, under the stairs.
Adds to the charm of an old building.
Another weird thing I experienced is the higher we went, the quicker the build got. I can understand using big wall elements to complete a build, but whereas we got intricate walls and very interesting greebling on the ground and middle floors, by the time we got to the top one, it was 1x6 bricks stacked on top of each other next to very large wall elements. Well, not very satisfying.
That's the same floor with a badly connected wall by the fireplace, right?
The same one.
Maybe they got tired of designing by the time they got there? Or they had a different designer work on the top floor?
Whatever it was a bit of a disappointment. What I appreciated, though, were some clever building techniques, especially for the angled wall at the front.
Oh, I love its lit-up stained glass window.
That is indeed the highlight of the building for me, too. But round the back of that section, they used what I call robot arms on either side to secure it to the rest of the build. Simple and oh so clever. So there you have it. The completed build looks very impressive, and even the big battery pack at the back isn't an eyesore. I also like how the lighting connection box is concealed yet easily accessible. Really nice work. And the back walls on hinges, meaning you can explore the ground floor somewhat without having to take the other floors off.
That's something LEGO modelers don't offer.
Exactly, it's a nice touch. Now, looking at the build, this side window is a bit disappointing because it's actually bigger than the largest element they have, meaning a different transparent element is used there, yet it's not fully see-through. So you can appreciate the ancient Greek helmet.
That's a bit odd since fully see-through pieces do exist in their inventory, and they've been used in the skylight at the top.
Yeah, that was a weird decision for sure. Also, we might have been given the wrong pieces for the skylight, as the instructions show not fully see-through parts for them as opposed to the clear ones we got.
Another mistake?
I'm not sure. Could be. So, let's finish off by exploring the store. You enter the building through the double doors and are graced with a huge shelving unit that extends beyond the ceiling.
I like that. I thought it was very original for something to extend beyond the ground floor like that, making it very unique when you remove the top 2 floors.
It's like the building is built around it in a way, and it's really nice, I agree, and full of trinkets, like antlers, crystals, and mostly books. You do have to be careful when removing and replacing the next floor, though, as it does get in the way as the fit is pretty tight. Now, the middle floor has to deal with the end of the giant shelves in the middle, but you also get some nice antique pieces on display, such as an old wall lamp, a large painting, a beautifully built piano, and an old Vitascope, one of the first film projectors.
Talk about a blast from the past!
And the top floor is all about timepieces.
Doc Brown will have loved it.
We've got a long case clock, a grandfather clock, a wall clock.
Hey, that's that wonky clock!
And bracket clocks. And the centerpiece of that level is a giant artwork showing time splitting a person between their young and old selves.
Talk about being packed with stuff.
And yet there's a little more. Stuff that's left outside the shop, namely an old tripod camera like they had in the Victorian era, and a painting on a trolley.
There's also some street decorations like a sign for a bus stop, a postbox, and a bench.
It's all there to add a little more life to the scene. Nice though all of this is, it's a bit sad the minifigs can't sit on the bench.
Yeah, that's a bit of a design flaw, I agree. And speaking of minifigs, the set comes with 4. We explored their unique shape and style in greater detail in our last FunWhole video. Yes, they're obviously quite different from the LEGO variants, and really if you don't like them, feel free to replace them with LEGO alternatives. But I do like their unique charm, even though I too personally prefer LEGO's originals.
So, despite its flaws and construction glitches which can make the building warp a little, you end up with a nice looking building with tons of detail and a gorgeous lit up option to boot.
Yeah, the glitches are a concern, and in that respect they're definitely not on LEGO's level, but you've got to consider several factors. First of all, originality. This is a model built around the style of LEGO Modulars, but done in a unique way, so you can add a good-looking new building to your city which will look great, as long as you don't touch it too much. And most importantly, the price. How much do you think a LEGO Modular building made up of 2,847 parts costs?
Oh, that's easy. The Jazz Club has 2,899 pieces and costs $230.
So nearly the same number of parts. Add to that a lighting kit, which can cost upwards of $100, which you have to buy separately from another company. But with FunWhole, you get all of that for only $160.
Wow, that's like half price.
And FunWhole often offer discounts from 10 to a whopping 25% off, so yeah. Compared to LEGO, you get printed pieces, a lighting kit, an original design, but also issues with the quality of the pieces which can and do warp the floors, causing issues. But this is something that they could work on and improve over time, and right now, I think I'd say they're 80% there. But for about half the price. That's a great deal in my book and definitely worth taking a look.
Although it's worth reiterating that those missing 20% do make quite a difference. You think the issue would be less noticeable if the floors weren't meant to be disconnected?
You mean the interesting looking steampunk trading center?
Yeah.
That's an interesting idea. Maybe we'll have a chance to check that one out one day.
But how would you add this to your LEGO city? LEGO Modulars are built on a base plate which are actually thinner than plates, which is what FunWhole uses. There would be a gap between the pavements.
There is a way to fix that, but that, my dear GG, will be the subject of another video. Until then, let us know what you think in the comments, and we'll speak to you again next time.